Hello and welcome back to the channel. This video is part of the knife throwing for dummies series. This would be chapter 2, methods, and within that video 1, a general introduction. So in knife throwing there is two very different methods to ensure that the thrown knife arrives point first into the target. Okay, on one side we have the conventional rotational throwing. Sometimes it's called traditional rotation, sometimes it's called rotational throwing, or roto for short. And on the other side we have instinctive throwing. Okay, now before we get into that, rotation. So first of all, in a knife throwing we count every completed half rotation. Okay, so if a knife thrown by the handle and it gets to the target, we call that no spin throwing. Okay, now doesn't matter if the release point is back here or out here. So no spin throwing can be anything up to 150 degrees to 130 degrees what the knife actually rotates. So about quarter turn, quarter is being 90 degrees. Okay, no completed 180, no spin. Okay, half spin throwing is done by the blade, pointy end. Thrown does one completed 180 and then a stick into the target. Okay, half spin or half rotation. Full spin, obviously thrown by the handle, does one half and another half and then sticks into the target. Okay, so basically every spin or every rotation has an extra quarter. So bear that in mind when we start to talk about this. The other thing to remember is every object, lengthy object, thrown from one end, thrown away, it wants to tumble forward. So have a forward rotational speed. So in conventional rotational throwing, we try to make this forward rotational speed uniform or the same all the time. And with that, we can establish a sweet spot, a spot or distance from the target where we can throw the knife and it will arrive point first. Okay, so that is actually the one positive side of conventional rotation, is that it's very repeatable, easy to learn, and once you establish the sweet spot, it will stick. Okay, now this is also the negative side of conventional rotation, is that the distance, the change of distance from the target can only be done by increments. Okay, so and adding extra half or taking away, depends on increase or decrease, half a rotations of the knife. Now to expand on this idea or to explain a little bit further, so what it means, generally speaking, a rule of thumb, the first half rotation, which is, remember, about 3/4, first half rotation is about 2 meters. One full rotation is about 3 meters. 1.5 is about 4 meters. Okay, now I have to tell or mention here that I am sorry for those who live in an imperial world with inches and feet, because most of the knife throwing, the distances are mentioned in meters or the metric unit. Okay, so I would strongly suggest, if you live in an imperial world, instead of trying to convert the meterage, get yourself a tape measure, which I lost mine somewhere, here, that either has inches and millimeters, or a tape measure that has only millimeters or meterage, because that will help you, especially if you want to do competition, because most of the competitions are measured out in meters or competition distances. Even the organizations the American organizations, most of them, okay, not everybody, most of them. Anyway, back to our little chat. So the downside is the distance change of distance can only done by increment. So, which means if my distance half spin is 2 meters, if I go out to 3 meters and I'm still holding by the blade, the knife will do one full rotation, half, one, and it will arrive to the target with handoff first. So you need to change the throw from one end to the other and increase the number of half rotation with the increase of distance. But once the sweet spots have been established, the stick is almost guaranteed unless you muck something up. Okay. Now the other advantage of this particular style, so ease of learning is one. Within one session you can actually stick knives. Two is once you get good at this can become a very accurate method. Sorry, not style, I should say method. Okay, because there's very few variables within the throw, because you're trying to keep the forward rotational speed constant. Okay. Now the other side is instinctive. Okay. Now you noticed I'm not saying instinctive no spin, because today there's lots of people started learning no spin throwing, and the term kind of got fused together, instinctive no spin. Although instinctive can be half spin or instinctive can be full spin. Well, let me explain. Now, my favorite description or explanation of an instinctive knife throw is that a knife is being thrown from an unfamiliar distance within the thrower's ability and thrown by a predetermined number of rotations. Okay, no sweet spot necessary or needed, or without the aid of a sweet spot. Okay, now I like to use the term unfamiliar distance. Some people using an unknown distance, but we're gonna come back to this. This is a whole kind of conversation. The nutshell is that you don't need to stand on 3 or whatever meters. You can be any place within your ability. Because, for example, in instinctive no spin or any instinctive side, what we're trying to do is we're slowing down this forward rotation. On the conventional side or rotational side, we're making this uniform. On the instinctive side, we're slowing it down, okay? Because remember, there will be a forward rotation of some sort, unless you're using a very specific throwing method, which I will come back in later videos. But for this video's purposes, there is about a quarter turn, okay? So we have to control the rate of this forward rotation. And because we can change distances to any distance where we want to be. Now this is the awesomeness, or this is a plus for the instinctive knife throwing, which is also a major negative because it takes time to develop. Most of us using index finger for this. Some people using thumb. We're gonna come back to that as well later on. The amount of pressure, or you can call it anti-spin, we're putting on the spine of the knife to slow this rotation down, okay? But for that, I should call it hard work, what we get is we can throw a knife from 5.5 meters, 4.2 meters, 3.9 meters. It doesn't matter. If we done it right, we have a large possibility that it will hit point first, okay? Now, I have mentioned that conventional rotation is, or will be, once practiced, will be more accurate, because in instinctive side, you have to, there's more variables. The amount of push can change the flight path. Now, I lost my train of thought for a second. Here we go. So with instinctive, within instinctive throwing, there is many ways, which I call styles, to generate this anti-spin, okay? Conventional rotation, there are different ways to hold the knife, different grips, which different people find more accurate this way or the other. But the arm motion, or the body motions, the body mechanics, is relatively the same, okay? Within instinctive throwing, there is many ways to generate this anti-spin to throw it down. And it's not enough that we got different ways to generate this anti-spin. We can also do overhand, we can do sidearm, we can do underhand, reverse, or some call it ice pick grip. Again, it's thrown this way, and the knife flies and then it hits. Sorry, I got out of frame, hits, right? So it's not just the way of generating this anti-spin, but also different arm angles, so to speak, okay? Now, I shouldn't say last, but because I kind of like this method, there is a method called military half spin, which belongs to the instinctive method family. Now, military half spin, and I don't know exactly where the name come from, but I assume it came from the military people. Let's assume that this knife has a life age. It doesn't. It has a force age. But let's assume that this one has a life age. Okay, and that's just the point. Now, to throw this half spin with a hammer grip, I will cut my hand, right? So there is a way of throwing or grabbing the knife, which means we grab the spine side like so. So the live edge is here, okay? Now the thumb does the slowing down. The thumb has the function of throwing the slowing. Start again. The thumb has the function of slowing down the forward rotation. Sorry, that was a mouthful to say. Okay. Now, with military half spin, it is actually quite usual, or it's a normal way that the people or the throwers keep changing the grip or the length of the grip, keep choking up on the knife. Okay, I will explain that later in videos, but it just seems to be important to mention that most people who throw with military half spin whereas you can see they will, depends on the distance, they will choke up on the knife. So the thumb contact is increased. With instinctive half spin, when you hold it like so, controlled by the index finger, it's very few people changes grip depth. Most instinctive knife throwers have the same grip all the time. Okay, now it's not necessarily this. One would have much shallower grips or deeper grips or different finger configurations. That is all within the instinctive, the beauty of the instinctive. It's very, it can be very, very personal, which is beautiful because you can experiment with it. You can find the best that suits you. Okay. Now, last, I have to mention this because I have heard this from a couple of newbies who started with conventional rotation, then they went instinctive, which they instantly called instinctive no spin, and then they started talking about how conventional rotation is boring. Now, the only people who would say this are those who haven't explored the full depth of it. Yes, it may, on the surface, it may feel boring, but I always compared conventional rotational throwing to sniper shooting. Well, not as a sniper, as an army person, but as a very accurate target shooting. Okay, because as I said, once you get good at it, I mean really, really good at it, you can be very accurate. So I don't think it's boring whatsoever, but it is between thrower to thrower. Okay, so hope you like this video. I'm sorry it went a little bit long, but instead of making it too short there one, I figured I'd make one longer. And in the next few video I will try to actually go through a kind of a teaching or show you how I do these methods, and maybe even some of the different styles, but that will be that's a few videos down the track. So yeah, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.